It's we call this Princeton Public Utility Commission in order. Today's date, October 26, 2022 at 1 o'clock. Do we have other people just coming at all from the city? Does anyone know?
I had not heard one area.
Okay, thank you. All right, roll call. Kathy, you good on that?
Good on it.
Thank you. Approval of agenda. I want to just take this moment before any action is taken that we do have a different format for the agenda. Public comment rules, if you wish to come to the meeting, will be supplied to you. And if you want to call in to make an appointment or just have a question, those rules will be supplied to you also. So reference that going forward, and everyone's welcome to contact the office or come here for any concerns or just to be involved and informed. So it's my understanding, I've been informed that there is no public comment.
I have not received it.
Thank you. Number 4, consent agenda. We're changing the format on this a little bit. We're not deleting any information or anything. We have always taken the public commission regular meeting minutes in consideration, the certificate of accounts payable into consideration, SMMPA minutes and metrics, the financial reports, income statement, balance sheet, trial balance, and cash reserves as a separate, and the operational reports, EV and ACH reports. When it comes to the agenda and the consent agenda on number 4, we are going to be looking at that as one option to approve. If any commission here has a question on those items that we always talked about, you can certainly bring it up when we come to number 4 on a consent agenda. So with that said, we have an approval of the agenda as it is newly written.
I'll second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. We talked about the public comment, so we'll go to concession agenda. Does anyone have any questions on number 4 with that listing A through E?
I'm sorry, sir, it's a consent agenda, so there is no discussion, just a motion to accept.
I'm asking the question, if indeed that they do have a question on it, then they would have to make rise to that point.
Oh, okay, well, from a procedural standpoint, that should happen during the approval of the agenda so that we can pull it out and renumber it accordingly.
Okay.
I mean, I think we're fine unless somebody has a question, but if.
And that was my question.
Well,
does anyone
but if
have a
they did,
question
then
on
we would
that?
have to
Jack, do you have a
redo the-
question on that?
No, I didn't understand it.
Dan, do you have any questions on that?
No, I don't.
All right. So
Did you hear, but you had a question on, but I don't know if that was, I was just trying to figure out what. that
For
was
3?
part of
3 or 4 or what?
on those projected balances, year-to-date balance.
I think that will come up
Was that
later. Keith, is this report that you and I have been talking about in a later format?
That is the budget.
Right.
Oh,
So
so
we'll
that's
talk
not,
about
that's
that.
not part of that consent agenda. That wasn't part of
So the
that.
budget discussion is 6C.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so it's my understanding that we have an approval on the agenda.
Yep.
And the public comment guidelines that we talked about, we're good there. Is there a approval for this new consent agenda process?
Sir, if I may, I just think all you need is a motion to accept the consent agenda.
We did already.
No, I think you approved the agenda for the meeting. I think what we need now is a motion to accept the consent agenda.
And that's what I just asked.
Okay, I'll make them.
I'll second.
Okay. Are there questions within that consent agenda from A through E? It's the second time I'm asking that, so,
Oh, I have none.
I have none.
okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passed. Updates, electric department.
Yes, in the past month or so since our last meeting, JR was up here again, we're doing some more field work. We've been passing back information there. He was up here for 2 days, finalizing some of the phase one engineering. We have been working again with Glenn Metalcraft, trying to get that project going and continuing to move forward. The transformer did show up for the new bank, Minco Credit Union out here. So we are waiting on them to get the concrete poured where the transformer is going to be sitting. That 3-phase primary is in. That we're waiting on them now instead of them waiting on us. So our transformer supplier had a cancellation in their schedule and they were able to slip that transformer in and get it to us. So that is going to be happening either in the next week or the week after, first part of the week after. So that's moving ahead. We put in the last 2 services in Northfield Commons. So I think that development up there is full. No, I think that one, the last 2 houses are being worked on up there. And one of them in before the driveways, or they want the driveways in before winter. So we got those done. We've had some MMUA safety training, a couple different dates, I believe. And just a meter reading and disconnects. And then just everyday stuff. These guys have been up working on 7th Avenue quite a bit. They've had quite a few days up there locating for the 7th Avenue project. It's been a big one. So that's been 3 or 4, it's been quite a few days they've been up there. So yeah.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yep.
Scott, on water.
Yes. Power plant is back there. Monthly runs for the old units were getting completed today. The cat was run prior, so then we're on the monthly stuff there. Ziegler was up and did a level 1 inspection on unit 7, part of the warranty contract. They went through that. They also attempted to replace the starters on unit 7. The new parts were found to be more defective than the parts that are on it that are still working. So they are waiting on a new set of starters for that. We started the MISO and Simple request a weekly fuel supply and consumable report of what we have on hand if we're having any troubles coming into winter here for securing anything or keeping track of that. Jim and I will be attending a SIMPA diesel workshop tomorrow and winter prep for buildings and the units for the power plant stuff. Onto the water. Been extremely busy this month. Water meter install has been going really good. We're up to 55%. And rolling right along, so hopefully that continues.
And I would like to just make a comment on just to remind everybody, when we initially started the water AMI project, our plan was to do 150 water nodes a quarter. We were doing that for cash flow reasons, but we were trying to figure it out and put all those in place and getting into the documented. Scott his crew and the office crew have been doing over 80 water bills a week. By comparison, and the process has been very effective. But Chrissy and Scott have just done a phenomenal job at really doing that in volume. So I just want to acknowledge the work the staff have done. It's been a really great story for us.
Thank you, guys.
We had a pre-construction meeting with KLM for a T-Mobile project that'll be happening first part of the month of November here coming up on the middle tower. So there'll be, see some people climbing around up there. Equipment upgrades on the phone stuff up there. Minnesota Department of Health was in for the annual sanitary survey. It's annual or every year and a half. Kind of depends on that, how it flows around, but that's an inspection. Treatment plants, water towers, full spec T samples, thorough inspection on what everything's going on there. So that went well yesterday. WSB was on site to continue gathering information for the comp water study that we're working on. We focused on the towers, treatment plants, working parts of the wells, and they're the kind of wells kind of fit that in there, so that's part of the included in the plan coming up. So they're making good progress on that. So we should have something back on that here in shortly. We had Minnesota Rural Water and the Department of Health, another Department of Health up for continuing work on the wellhead protection project. They were out inspecting for potential contaminant sources around the wells and facilities for that stuff. So that was part of that project that we got there. We got fall hydrant flushing completed. We've got the winter prep for the towers and the plants, along with sprinkler turnoffs for the irrigation system throughout town, and for some residents that are snowbirds that are heading out of town, so we do some shut off for them. So we've been working along with them, and then we have the monthly back keys and sampling for that, and then say a fair amount of locating in between meter installs, and we had a busy month.
Can I answer a couple questions?
Sure.
So curious, just kind of a curiosity question. So they put the last 2 houses in, or 2 or 3, whatever, on the end there by the water tower. There's a little 3-corner piece that was seeded instead of sodded. Is that hard, or is that the
I believe that's part of the lot. I think it's in an easement, I think, but it is part of their lot.
I'm curious.
I think so.
I think that's
Yeah,
the correct way to go.
That was seeded, not sodded.
Mhm.
Kind of curious. And then one of the owners of one of the brand new houses there, I was out campaigning this weekend. He brought up, and I think we talked about it in the past, some kind of a buffer and the fence around there. Like I think we talked about slatting at one time or something. Or he was wasn't complaining, but he kind of brought up, be nice to have a little bit of buffer between our transformer and their houses. And I didn't promise anything for it, but I remember I thought we talked about that in the past.
We did, Jack, and that was from the past city administrator. He was requesting something like that. No action was taken on it. So if it wants to be brought up again, I would invite him, this person, to come to the meeting and get some more information.
Well, I don't know if we're
No, but if you know where he lives, or call him or whoever he is, I don't know, but we'll certainly listen to his concern. Doesn't sound like a complaint, but maybe just a.
No, he knew, and he just brought up, when he goes down his back door, and he was, and I said, well, you can't hide everything back there, you're not gonna hide a water tower, and no, he would fully understand. So I just thought I'd bring it up.
Thank you. Any other questions for Scott? Thank you, Scott. City of Princeton update, Michelle.
Yes, Jules sends his regrets. We had other schedule got busier and stuff to do, so that's made a cover. Let's see, we approved the preliminary budget for the city. Levy is at a 12% increase. The things that part of the things that we're obviously still evaluating, full-time additional public works staff person, moving the fire chief from half-time to 3/4 time. Our health insurance premiums came back at 13% increase, and I factored in a 15% increase. We're in the process right now of evaluating our fees, including looking at ones that don't make a lot of sense, and whether or not we need to increase them, since some of them haven't been increased since Princeton still was growing potatoes, I think. And we're also looking at our lease rates and probably going to see another sewer rate increase next year, potentially. There's no change in the staffing at this point. We're continuing to use an outside financial firm for consultation on financial questions. We've had a number of closings for real estate. We closed on the property we sold to Silva Corporation up at airports. The KBOB closings occurred last week. We actually had a loan with KBOB, so the city was made whole on that. And on Monday, the Pause for You site, which is the old liquor store, is being sold. And we have a closing scheduled there, so that will be officially off the city's books, I guess, from a real estate perspective. And our contract for deed will be satisfied that we have with a current operator. We're continuing to implement our new upgraded financial software. Right now we're practicing, I guess, for lack of a better term, doing online time card data entry. So this pay period is another practice round, and then on the next pay period we'll actually go live. So we'll be doing time cards, electronic requests for time off. So that's kind of fun, except for those that hate change. We are working on doing electronic bill paying as well, meaning I should say not bill paying per se, but invoice approvals and putting stuff into the system that way. So instead of Karen getting the bill and putting it in a folder and giving it to the department head, she'll be able to basically literally just scan it into the system, do some data entry, and then the supervisors and department heads will get them electronically, and we'll put their GL codes in and approve it and send it back. So, and then it goes right from there into the select which invoices we want to pay process, and then it goes to the council. And so yeah, so we're, and then the system stores all the scanned invoice copies, so that'll be fun when we have to do audits, because the auditors can just have an access to the online system, and like it'll be so much easier. The Fountain Place development has preliminary plat approval from the planning commission. In November, it will have final plat approval. We're currently working with the developer to purchase the sale of our old hangar lots. We have a draft purchase agreement that's been running around for review amongst staff and the interested party. We're working on the Glen Metalcraft project, as Jeremy noted. That's going through site plan review right now. We have to do a replat of the business park, so that's scheduled for November, December. And Stacy is probably going to be on a conference call because I think they're going to be looking for some assistance from the state. So, and we've agreed through our purchase agreement to support them in their endeavors. I am in the process of finishing up the list of assessments for old unpaid fire bills. We had roughly $39,000 outstanding. And as of right now, I'm up to about having to write off about 19,000 of that amount, which doesn't make me happy, but it is what it is. We're close to finishing our classification compensation study. Our contractor had issues in getting responses from our benchmark cities. It's kind of disappointing. It's like, okay, yeah, we sent you a spreadsheet, but in reality, just send us your pay scales and your compensation packages, because we'll decipher it. But I've had to send out several emails begging my fellow administrators to send the information over. On the council agenda this week, I have a request to remove the First Street car charger. Council's talked about that. That's one of the first ones, I guess, that was ever installed. It is not pay as you go, so we eat roughly $1,500, $1,700 a year. We also have complaints about people that are parking there that aren't charging, and it's just it's not super fun. So, and the technology is old and it's probably not very efficient. So the council discussed it as part of our budget review once we adopted the preliminary levy, and they by consensus agreed that we should remove it, and I'm just formalizing that decision on the agenda this week. So, and then last but not least, WSB has finished our pavement management plan for streets. And they're wrapping that information into our transportation plan. So that will be finished. And as part of that, since we are over 5,000 population now, we are now eligible for Minnesota State Aid street funding. So they've been working on identifying street segments to be certified for the Minnesota State Street System program. We have roughly 6 miles that we can designate that we can then use. We'll get an allocation for maintenance, which can be used on any city street, but then we have an allocation for construction, which can only be used on state aid segments. So with that, we are planning to basically look at combination of the transportation plan and our sewer plan to start looking at essentially the pavement management plan came back with, we've got really good streets and roads, surprisingly, given the fact that the north end neighborhoods are literally seal coat over the existing sand and gravel. There's literally no base. It's just years and years and years of seal coating. So it's not like we can do mills and overlays and whatnot, but our pavement condition index came back fairly high. And so what's really going to drive our street reconstruction project or program is going to be the infrastructure underneath the streets. And so in December, we're going to present that in study session to the council and start looking at where we're prioritizing those projects, and then looking at how do we start funding it.
And WSB's been sharing our water stuff as well, so we're trying to
Yes.
how the water needs as well, or yes,
Yes.
we can.
Yeah. So it's going to be I anticipate several conversations as to how to prioritize, how often are we going to do projects. Anybody that I didn't read the article, but Jen mentioned that on Sunday, there was an article in the Star Tribune newspaper about communities suing cities for doing special assessments. So depending upon where that goes, that may be a tool that comes off the table for cities to use, or tighten, the legislature will likely potentially tighten up what you can do that for. So, anyway, there's all kinds of stuff on the table, but we need to prioritize and then start figuring out other tools that we can use to fund these projects. So that's my report.
I have a couple questions for you, Michelle, if you don't mind.
I'll try to answer them.
I didn't want to interrupt you, so
No,
I was
that's
just
okay.
taking notes and whatnot. So, and I don't know how much information you can share with the old liquor store. Right? You saying that is sold?
Correct. So the lady, the contractor deed holder, that was operating the Paws Up For You facility, she ended up running into some health issues, so that's why it's been closed. And they've had it on the market. They actually had a potential buyer back in, I want to say, August-ish, but that fell through. And so, yes, there's a closing scheduled for Monday.
Okay.
I do not know who is purchasing it though.
Okay.
So,
All right. Thanks for that clarification.
yep.
The charging unit on First Street is coming up at tomorrow's.
Correct.
Okay. So Keith, I'd have a question for you. If that's not a pay as you go, is there something that that we can do to me to take this technology and then take it away to bring that up to the current technology and make it a pay as you go? So it's not a negative.
It's an old unit that can't be converted. And so you would have to put in a completely new charging station.
But is there an avenue through SIMPA that we could at least investigate to, it seems to me.
If a member wants to put in more charging stations than what we've already been allocated, it would be at the member's cost. So we can obviously purchase more than what we've received, but there's no grant program.
How current is that information that there's, I mean, when was the last time somebody actually called SIMPA and said, hey, we've got this first phase generation. Can we, instead of making it a negative after we brought in a positive future thing, but now it's outdated. The parking thing, that shouldn't be an issue because we have other units out there and I don't hear any complaints about people parking in those locations without being charged. So
The one that the city is removing, though, they purchased this like 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And it's on a public street.
And it's on a public street, that's why.
The other,
And I'm just giving you the information.
no, and I appreciate that.
This is something that. What was her name that bought that? I mean, they bought,
Jolene,
Jolene bought this like offline, online. And this was like, you know, and she threw this, I mean, it worked out, but it was just something that she found a map with no dots between like the cities and the casino. And it was just a community project that she put together, and they enlisted the help, I think, of Rick Palmer, Princeton Electric, and us in the city, and it was purchased off the internet. And so it was just there was no program or anything that was a part of it. It was just something that the city decided to do as part of the community. So it's not, yeah, it was just.
Keith and Keith and Heather before Stacy. I mean, we have been looking for other programs to replace. You know, I would, if we were to do it again, I would not put it on a public street. I would put it, I mean, we have multiple public parking lots that might be better suited. You know, we have the parking lot on the north end of North Mall. And we have the one at Neighbors. There's one at Coburn's. Shipwreck has one. So it's not that
There's one by Sherburne Bank.
Right.
is there one by Sherburne Bank already? Okay, well, that's what I'm, so.
Okay.
Pizza pub.
Okay, I mean, if we're gonna, frankly, if we were, I guess, given the fact that they're all along River Drive, it might make some sense to actually do one by like Walmart or liquor store or.
Which, for the record, we tried and didn't get any.
Aldi, I think we tried Aldi.
We tried Aldi, we tried Walmart, we tried Burgers, we tried. We tried everybody.
No, that's right. I think they didn't go.
I mean, maybe, maybe since we're talking, Minco's going in, maybe there's, but like, like he said, we've been looking to see if there's some grant programs out there to replace it, but,
Okay.
and again, I would suggest that, given how many we have on that same north-south stretch of Rum River, it might make some sense to, and maybe we look at encouraging, say, Glen Metalcraft or the folks that are doing, potentially purchasing our old hangar lots. Maybe there's some conversations that we can have with those folks.
Okay,
So,
all of that information brought me up to date, so I appreciate that. One of the questions, Michelle, is you mentioned, or maybe Dan, a development that was approved by the planning commission. What
Fountain
development is it?
Place. Yep, it's the Fountain Place.
Fountain's Place?
Fountain Place.
Fountain Place, okay.
It's right over here. It's that last, I don't know how many acres it is, off of
So 15.
15th,
14th and.
14th and Meadowview.
My neighbor.
5 acres.
Yeah.
It's a big 21 houses.
21 houses, yeah.
20 houses.
I think it's 20 twin homes
20
single.
and one single family.
10. Yeah, 10.
Right out here by the pond in Meadowview.
Oh, okay,
Right up by Mark Park in the pond.
Yeah, he did it all cleared off.
okay.
Like 11 structures.
Was that the same property that RW Builders was looking at?
Yes,
That's
exact
that.
same.
Okay,
It's their property, it's their
because I
property.
thought, my understanding was there was only room for like 2 buildings, but no.
No, it's
It's like 5 acres.
Okay.
It's a big city block, I call it. Yeah.
Okay,
You're not thinking of the apartments out here first.
no.
It was,
All right. Just getting clarification.
There was, yeah, we had a public hearing. That's fun.
All right, thank you, Michelle.
One thing we should all have, I work for TriCap and we converted to electronic payroll and stuff in the time of, and it does work.
It does.
It's like a big change, but it, it went through a couple of hoops, but
Yeah, and
I love it. I know.
yeah, we just have some departments that have extremely complicated time entry requirements. The police department is one of them, Public Works is another, but we've figured out ways to accommodate that. And I'm making some changes even in the budgeting system as to, we're not going to do as much allocation as we do, especially for Public Works. Every staff person is going to have their home department, and it'll be Bob's time to do time cards and improve time will be a lot more streamlined.
Each of the lead drivers reviewed the time card type sheets.
Yeah.
And they're the final thing.
Yeah, so I anticipate it will go well. I'm just teased that people just don't want to change, so. That's okay. I have pictures.
All right, thank you, Michelle.
Yep.
Mr. Butcher.
Yeah, a couple updates, a few things. Commission had approved a renewable energy credit program, earlier this year. I've been working with Owatonna. We're kind of doing a joint effort on that. We do have a program name. It's going to be called Mission Renew. Jared down in Owatonna and I were talking, about trying to put together some marketing pieces for that. I got Simba involved. Simba's going to go ahead and do that because then we can launch the whole program for the entire membership. I'm still hoping to at least be able to sign people up in January of next year. But as soon as Simba gets some materials together, we can start getting that out to the public. See that they have an option if carbon-free energy is of interest to them. It is October, which means cold weather rule is in effect. That starts October 1st, since the legislature changed the time period a couple of years ago. We spent a lot of time over the last probably 6 months redesigning the payment plan application to better reflect customers' rights and responsibilities, making it easier to read, better explaining what that cold weather rule requirement is. Just as a reminder, the cold weather rule is income based. It's not protection for everybody. It's really targeted at those individuals that are under some financial duress and trying to help take care of them. So, and it's 50% of state median is the income requirement. It also requires that they communicate with us prior to disconnection, and that they make and honor a payment plan. So we've been communicating those rules more to customers. For customers, and that is a little different than what we did before. We handled it pretty loosely, but unfortunately, that caused a lot of misunderstandings, and it wasn't very clear. So by putting excuse me, putting more definition of that, it's actually worked out really well. Over the winter time, though, for the non-CW cold weather rule eligible customers, we are working with them on a case-by-case basis to make sure to try to get them current with minimal disruption in service. So we're serving everyone in that regard. Like I said, we spent the last year clarifying what our goals are for the cold weather program, evaluating how we communicate that with customers, and basically rethinking the entire process. And I think the result of that was that this month's disconnection process, I think was actually the smoothest we've had since I started. We were just able to process everything, address questions and comments without further aggravating a delicate situation. And I don't think we're done. We're continuing to review the process and then how we're working what isn't. So I think it's going to get better. And I really want to give a shout out to the office staff, particularly Chrissy and Debbie, for what they've done to make that whole process work better. Yes, Jeremy.
In the 18+ years I've been here, I think that is the first month of October that's probably the smoothest October I've been through.
Thank you. I think
From a sheer numbers point.
Mhm.
I don't know if I can say a number, but
Yeah, I think we had 76 door hangers,
76 or 67.
something like that. Yeah. And then I think we actually ended up having to disconnect 10.
10 was 14, or it was started out at 14 Monday morning, and we got out there to do it. It was down to like 10 or 12.
Correct. So
Actual physical disconnects.
yeah.
Some of those were disconnect meters. I think 4 of them were disconnect meters, so it was like 6 or 7 actual physical disconnects. And I can't remember a month of October where it was a dozen disconnects. We're usually talking 30, 40, 50 because of the cold weather.
Yeah.
So it went extremely well.
So yeah, I think we've made great progress on that, and doing what we need to do, but doing it in a way that communicating that in a way to try to keep moving the ball forward. On the rate study, I will have final numbers for actual rates for approval in November, and we are currently updating a lot of our internal tracking sheets to handle the new rate designs that the commission approved. We did update the Enterlite web portal language to not allow payments via e-check once the customer has been disconnected, to avoid some confusion there. And Jeremy mentioned we had safety training on October 2nd, which was office and fire safety. So we're continuing to move forward with that. And I think that was the first one that was technically under the joint city utility. I think we kind of switched over to that now. So I know the city had training the same day. On the energy efficiency side, we did big check pictures on October 4th with Edward Jones, which was published in the Union Times in case people missed it. And great clips. We also issued rebates to Wax County, DAC, the Creamery, Professional Building, and Christ Our Lady Church. We did some customer outreach for Public Power Week, which was October 3rd through the 9th. So we're active on social media, celebrating public power. And for some of the external organizations we work with, SIMPA had a budget workshop on 9/27 that I attended. There was the annual meeting on October 13th through the 14th. Commissioner Erickson and myself attended that. At the board meeting Friday morning, the Simple Board did implement a 10% rate increase effective November 1st of this year. And they will be implementing an ECA or energy cost adjustment effective February 1st of 2023. There was an open board seat and Lake City was elected to the Simple Board, so they're the new members there. Simple also had an audit committee meeting on 10/18, which I attended as well, to just make sure that we refresh the policies and keep everything moving forward. For MMUA, I'm part of a joint group between MMUA and MREA, which is the Minnesota Rural Electric Association, which is the co-ops. We are working on a joint statement. There's a lot of similarities between munis and co-ops in terms of what we'd like to see at the state legislature. So we're just building some synergies there as we move forward on those topics that we have some consensus on. MMUA also had an audit and finance committee meeting on 10/13 to help select the MMUA's auditor. Unfortunately, that was during the simple annual meeting, so it was on 10. For the Chamber of Commerce, there was a for Manufacturing Month, there was a tour of Glen Metalcraft on October 4th. Chair Schwartz and myself attended that. I thought that was pretty interesting. Chamber did hold a morning networking event on October 12th. Scott and I attended that and presented our wellhead protection plan for people to understand the work that we're doing to preserve our groundwater resources. There was a chamber leadership tour on October 20th. Scott and Jim hosted that. We had folks come in and do a tour of the power plant. So we'll be back here with them. Those are the highlights. If there's any questions or anyone wants to add to it.
I have a couple. One for you. Did you say Glen Metalcraft or Plastic Products?
Oh, did I have that wrong?
Yeah.
You did Plastic Products. Thank you. That is correct.
The other question I have is for Commissioner Dan. You want to tell us about 13th and 14th? How that?
I was just out there the one day I wasn't there for the vote and the meeting in the morning, but you know, the presentation, what is it? Was he a motivational speaker / comedian / magician?
Yeah.
That he was pretty good. So he was pretty entertaining. He was, you know, he was worked in team building type things into his acting. It was pretty funny. I don't know, you know, one of the things they were talking about is, you know, I know I've read some things about is the coal supply, which was kind of eye-opening. You know, whether it was supply constraints or, but they shut down Trickle 3 for what was it, a month or two, but
Yeah.
the loss in revenues, you know, what, $55 million. Yeah. I don't know, just some, you know, it's just kind of surprising what's going on in that, you know, who knows where it's
Outside of our world.
well, yeah, but I mean, it's
A lot of it has to do with the railroad.
yeah.
Moving it.
So just getting it moved. They were talking about, you know, if there was a railroad strike, I don't know, it would be. But just that if we would have kept running that plant, we would have been out of coal by November 5th or something like that. I think is what they had said if they wouldn't have shut that down and then, you know, talk about maybe running it at lesser capacity. But, I don't know. It's I don't know. I don't really know if anything will come to fruition with that. You know, it's hard to say, but it's, you know, just interesting information
Yeah, right.
that you know, those types of things can happen in our
That was somewhat
world, you know.
Yeah, touched on our summer meeting up north that I attended. So how important the coal and the train and the availability of coal via train. So I found it interesting, so I just wanted to get your take on it. on your thoughts.
Yeah, maybe it's some of the same information.
It could have been,
Little updated.
but I think it's well worthwhile attending those. You know, we can rotate and do whatever, but
Yeah.
it brings insight beyond our scope.
Kind of talking about some of the, like the 2035 deadline for, you know, electric vehicles or, you know, basically what I got out of it might as well be tomorrow. We're not gonna make, you know, this kind of how I read it. I don't know if I misread that. I don't know if you read about that. It's
You're referring to the California?
You know,
Just California needs to
yeah,
on that. That's whether or not nationwide or Minnesota, I don't, Minnesota doesn't.
yeah,
I think your sense in terms of what's really gonna happen and people trying to project today. what's
Right,
gonna happen 10 years
right,
from now is difficult.
right.
It is a disruptive technology, so, you know, how fast can that happen or will it happen?
Yeah,
I don't
I mean, I think, you know, what's planned and what will actually happen might not
2 different things.
be the same. It could be, you never know.
Right.
But, you know, it just, you know, the big picture, it's just, you're turning a ship, you're not turning a jet ski, you know, it moves real slow when you turn the wheel. So, you know, if this is if we're running coal and we're gonna switch to natural gas and renewables, it's just not that, you know, it's not that easy of a transition. Same with going from vehicles that are powered by
Right.
fossil fuel to electric. Yeah, it's just, it was interesting, you know, and interesting information, you know, what'll happen, so, for sure, because so many different factors. So another interesting stat was cost of natural gas, and was interesting. It has been climbing. They say we're going to switch to natural gas, possibly. I'm sure go through, but the price of it's just been climbing.
Because we're shipping it to Europe.
Right, we weren't
before, but that's why the price.
So the price went up. Well, then somehow our ability to export it for a month got shut down for, I don't know, maintenance or something, and the price went down. Oh, the plant exploded. So then natural gas went down because we weren't shipping it
Right.
out of our country, you
Right.
know. And then, you know, they talked about, you know, the war in Ukraine and stuff, but it seemed like it had been going up before that even started. So
Yeah, I
As far as-
saw the charts on that, and the war has a huge part of it because Europe was getting a lot of gas from Russia. So that was cut off.
when we weren't exporting it, it didn't really matter what anybody else was doing. Then I don't know, you know, can we really tell people that can't export
Right. Well, it's still a
natural
resource
resources?
to pay the highest is gonna get it, so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was interesting how I could see different policy changes could really affect
Yeah.
our country's cost of energy,
Right.
you know.
All right.
Yeah,
Can I just add a couple of comments? Sure. To, here the chambers, industrial thing they've been doing the tours.
Yes,
If you guys went to plastic products,
yes.
Glenn Belgrave did have one entertaining tours, be a week ago, yesterday probably, or somewhere there. I went to Glenn Belgrave. I was the only one there, but they took me around anyway.
I didn't know about it.
Yeah, I thought it was baseball. Actually, I had been in there back before. I think Joe took me through there one time for one reason or another. But then yesterday, Crystal was doing the same thing. And again, 11:30 was one of the times. So I went over there. And the chamber had maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 chamber member there. And oh, I'm crashing a party or something here, but no, come on, And I bet you half of my family had worked at Crystal one time or another, except me. And I never been in that building. So it was really, we didn't talk about energy stuff, but that's amazing in that Crystal. You guys ever been in there? If you haven't, boy, to get a chance, go. They have so much automation in there and all stuff, which is mind-boggling.
How else besides social media could we get that information out? That may not be a question for this group, but I don't enjoy going on both.
Yeah, the chamber portion, so I don't know.
Yeah, let's,
I just wasn't,
if you can get on the chamber's email, I got an email.
okay. All right.
It's posted on the bulletin board.
I think if you can get on the chamber's email.
Then if you're on the Princeton bulletin board, you shouldn't be getting stuff. I don't know, I'm not going mad, I guess.
I don't
No,
know.
and that's why I said it may not be a question this group can answer, but if I'm not aware of it, maybe other people aren't either, so.
Well, I'm sure.
Okay, let's move forward. Regular item 6A, electric cap plan.
Yes, sir. We did hand out we sent out a resolution, and we provided hard copies as well for here. We're continuing to move forward with the phase one of the 10-year cap plan. The commission is continually reviewing and approving. We are ready to go out for presenting major materials and bid package to get to solicit bids for the material equipment. So this would be single phase transformers, 3-phase transformers, pads, wire, am I missing anything, Jeremy? Switches. So this is a material only bid. But I figured, I was thinking it would be good for the commission to actually approve the resolution allowing us to go out for bid for this phase as part of the project. So resolution 22-07 is in your packet, which will direct the commission secretary, which is Kathy, to post, to do a public notice in our newspaper of record, which is Evening Times. And we will also get it out to all the manufacturers that we know about and are participate in this kind of function. The idea is it would get published. Bids would be due on October 8th at 1 p.m. At which time DGR is it the 7th?
December, you said October.
Oh, I have my apologies. December 8th. At which time DGR and Principal Utilities will review the bids, evaluate them, and then bring those to the commission meeting on the 21st for the commission to review and possibly award the contract for phase one, which would then start. We would keep moving that process forward. So the resolution, like I said, it's just merely to direct the posting of the plans and specifications so we can get those bids.
So the action on the floor is submitted through 22-07. Is there any discussion or a motion on that?
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passed. So that's just a copy of the resolution.
Yeah, but it's one of the we had heard.
Item B, proposed 2023 fee schedule.
Yes, sir. Again, just kind of recap the process that we did last year. That seemed to work pretty well, which is staff introduced a proposal for 2023 fees and the 2023 budget. This is the introduction of it. We can have a discussion or try to answer any questions you might have. But the intent is also to just give it to you guys, to the commission now. Let you kind of review it, think about it. We can talk about it. We would then discuss it at the November meeting, take in comments, answer any other questions, talk about any changes that commissioners might be thinking about, and then think about it for another month and then approve it in December or effective on January 1st. For the fee schedule, what I did is I have a proposed fee schedule and then I made comments in the right column just to let you know if there was a change or any other information that seemed like it would be helpful. As we go through it, one of the major changes on the administrative service charge side of things was as I was working through it, we do have a utility deposit for commercial entities, which is $700. However, we do have some commercial entities, particularly out in the South Industrial lot, which are not our electric customers and might just, be a small water and sewer customer, in which case 700 seems might be a little high. So I was kind of thinking, well, what I'm putting out for consideration is maybe we have separate commercial deposits. One if they have all three utilities, one if they're electric only, and one if they're water and sewer only. So that was one suggestion. Continuing on down to the electric new service connection fees. We're looking again at trying to kind of streamline this a little bit, make it less confusing, make it easier to enforce and create a more positive interaction. Well, one such thing is the new service connection fee right now for residential projects is on a per amp basis. That can get a little confusing and enforcement after the fact that can sometimes be contentious. Going forward, pretty much every standard residential meter socket is 200 amps anyway. And Jeremy, feel free to jump in if you want to say anything. So we were thinking of just creating a flat fee per service of $650 for up to a 200 amp service. And then if they choose to go higher than that because they have an electric vehicle charger or whatever, and need to go to 400 amps, then then at that point we would charge them another $650 for a 400 amp service. But just doing the flat rate gets us away from having somebody come in and say they want a 150 amp service and then they actually put up 200 amp. We just thought a flat rate would make that easier. And it's got and then on the commercial industrial side, that can vary by a lot. So that's harder to do a flat rate, but thought it was time. It's been at 450 per amp for as long as I know. So we're going to increase that to $5 per amp. Update the temporary connection charge to $200 because of the labor associated with that. And then we do have a separate access and trunk fees. We were just going to combine that into one lot fee of $1,000 per lot. I will point out that for all of these, I do keep tabs on our neighbors. So I always try to, I want to make sure that we're not out of line. And so the numbers that I'm putting together here are within, are competitive. In many cases, it's still lower actually, but I do keep an eye on whatever utilities are doing. For single phase underground plowing, did want to bump that up to $875. Again, a lot of that has to do with just the costs that we're seeing. And what else? Oh, the mini manhole. The commission did approve that at $125, but that again, that was a fixed cost. Just like we had done earlier this year, I'm suggesting since that's a material that we remove it and base that on actual costs, just like we did for the water meters. Other than that, everything else remained the same. So I guess if there's some initial comments, I'm happy to have a discussion and let you know at least what we're thinking. Otherwise, it is something for folks to review. You guys can feel free to send me questions as they come up. Happy to share what I know. Are there any questions at the moment about the fee schedule?
I don't have
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Keith. We'll move on to letter C. proposed budget for 2023?
Yes, sir. Again, same process. This is merely an introduction. I feel a good, starting point is to look at our year-to-date. Well, for this current year, 2022. So you have a table in your memo, 22.6, showing revenues and expenses compared to budget. And you can see that, you know, green is good, red is bad. Our revenues are a little bit above budgeted amounts for both electric and water. Our operating expenses for electric are higher than what we anticipated. That was primarily due to the added SIMPA costs that we've had on our transmission charges. So that's where that came from. So there was, we underestimated that, but otherwise everything is green, that's positive. As we look to 2023, there's a couple of key points that I want for folks to think about. Mention those in the memo. Couple of things I think, and it'll come out as I go through some of the other areas. In particular, I think one of the big ticket items that we're looking at that we would like to have more of a conversation with is the purchase of a backhoe for the water department. That is becoming a particular concern for us. We have been put on notice from our contractor that if there is an emergency situation, they will try, and I believe them, but they do not have the capabilities that we benefited from in the past. There are actually municipals around us who are going forward and purchasing their own equipment due to a lack of contractors available for those, especially those emergency situations. They're busy doing all their own regularly scheduled construction projects. And the biggest concern we have at the moment is if we have a water main break at 2 a.m. on a Sunday in the middle of February, what do? We don't have the equipment to get down to the water main and repair it. And if contractors are not have the same availability they've had in the past, we are risking an outage for several days. It's best guess we can get them in. That is obviously a big reliability concern for us. And so a backhoe would allow us to be able to do a lot of that work ourselves rather than contracting out. Last I heard, there was a municipal that did experience a water main break. There was a contractor at St. Cloud that they found. That contractor was on site pretty quickly, but they paid for it. So it is a balance there, and with labor shortages that we're seeing through various industries, we're just concerned about the risk. So we do have that in the budget. So I'll go through the large projects listed to kind of go through what we're thinking about. We do have a couple of roof replacements scheduled. The first one listed is the one that is co-funded by SIMPA since it's over the generating units. So our share of that is only $27,500, even though the total project cost is $77,000. SIMPA will pay the remainder. That was supposed to have been done this year, but we postponed it to get into SIMPA's budget, so we didn't have to pay the full amount ourselves. And then we did have the next roof replacement scheduled as part of our long-term plan with McDowell, right? McDowell's the name of the company. Which would be the office portion. So to catch back up to our replacement schedule, we would do both those projects next year. We are looking at doing a network server upgrade to keep our IT current. We are looking at, given how workflows are working out and the more time that we're spending on the customer service side of things, hiring a full-time CSR for next year, and then doing I call it an office remodel. That's probably sounds bigger than what it is, but it's really looking at our workflow, moving some desks around, maybe buying a couple of dividers, just getting our office space more conducive to the modern activities that we're having to do. Our security system is old and does need to be updated, so there's $5,000 there. Some continuing undergrounding and system improvement work, that budget amount has, been dropping and, we are doing a lot through the CAP plan, to address those things, but we still have projects that come up. And keeping some funds there, to do, those ancillary services, I think are important. Our air permit renewal is next year. Simba is helping us with that cost as well, but we do have our own contribution. We are continuing to keep a truck replacement in the budget. It's been difficult finding something at a reasonable price that we feel good about. So we'd like to keep that as an earmark for when we do find something. So that we're not stuck with replacing multiple vehicles in the same year. I did have the AMI water in here. Currently, I'm assuming zero budget. I think we've got everything we need in-house for that. So as we get closer to the year and we confirm that, I can actually probably take that off by December. But I want to keep that as a placeholder just in case.
Basically, as an unknown of how many meters when we get into the houses, we don't know. We haven't changed out of the brass itself, so
Yeah, so right now we don't,
we're looking
I'm
good.
being optimistic,
Mhm, it's
but it
looking
is
good.
possible when we get into it. But most of that's gonna come out, it'll be an inventory issue anyway, but still, wanted to, the project not complete, so just wanted to kind of keep that on people's radars. Wellhead protection, we do have some leftover, activities, we're working with WSP on that, the project is supposed to start wrapping up kind of the end of 2023, if I remember the schedule correctly. We're doing a lot of work right now, but we're going to continue to incur some expenses next year. So what you're seeing there is a balance that was approved earlier this year. We are looking at doing some south water tower, washing the south water tower to just maintain our assets. We did get a KLM bid for the south water tower. If you guys notice it, it's a little grimy underneath, which is the one right off 169. We like it. Look good for the passersby.
One people see something.
Huh?
After one people see.
Yeah, exactly. So get that cleaned up, make sure that the everything underneath is going well. So the KLM bin is for $97.50. So put in 10 for that budget, and then already talked about the backhoe. We were tentatively thinking around the $125,000 price range, which would include the attachments and implements that we think we would need to be able to do a water main project. And I think Scott, if I remember correctly, some sort of box.
Trench box for trench safety.
Yeah.
Part of it. There's some options on that we can investigate into further for some grants on that particular thing. So for a safety item
To prevent fall.
cave-ins, collapse and stuff like that. So
That's what we're,
Yeah.
Right,
there's nothing we can.
you have to have that.
So we kind of put everything in that 125. I know Scott will do his best to be under that as much as he can. So.
Well, when you're looking at that now, if you're gonna bring that water line repair in-house, you have your own machine, of course, and the safety stuff, and you had to have the ability to do it, to do the work, actual work,
yes.
work that the West Branch had to work.
Mhm.
I mean, that all goes with it.
And materials, we've supplied materials for them projects that we've had. So we have already in previous years of inventory for repair parts and used parts there. So we have them on hand to accomplish any of them. 99.9% of the repairs. And we have that all in inventory for them emergencies. So
So they generally didn't bring their, we furnished the parts.
we furnish all the parts. Yeah, we have always furnished parts for there. So for them.
So we're 4 hours there.
Mhm.
Mhm. And then, I mean, the purpose for this is for the water department for that water main work. But once we have one, it might help with some electric services, some construction on that side as well. I can see it's one of those things where once you have the equipment, you might find some you see
You'll find it for that.
that you're not quite anticipating, but the whole motivation for it was that reliability.
And like Keith said, there's a number of cities that are just, they're running into the same problem. Their contractors just aren't doing it. They don't need to do it.
Right, they're already busy.
Well, they don't want to do it. Well, they're busy enough in the summer and we don't need to go all in 30 below.
Right.
in the
And
winter.
it's hit and miss, yeah, you might not have a break all summer, next year you might have.
But it's
three
just,
months.
that's part of it, is we don't need to do it in the winter time, we don't wanna do it in the winter time, and that's just the way it's going. They got enough work in the summertime that they don't need to work. Unfortunately, so.
My philosophy on that, and always has been and will continue to be, in my business, Dan, I think you'd probably agree with me, but in yours, if you don't have the equipment to protect our background of being efficiently back online, or more water or whatever, our downtime zero if possible, which is impossible, but I'm all for giving you the tools that you need to perform so we're less reliable on other companies. As long as you have the staff to do what you need to do with this extra equipment, then I agree with Jack that you guys are very talented people, and we don't have to rely on others. I'm all for that. If it's a backhoe, or we bought that, I don't even remember what it was, pump, this past summer.
The background?
Yeah. So, and I don't think this issue should even be an issue. It's just, how can we support you to do your job better and to give the reliability to Princeton? So as I look through all of this data, so here's another piece of equipment. I would just make sure that we're buying quality equipment, not necessarily new, but something that we're not putting a Band-Aid on every single time you go to use it. But if we can also streamline in other places, for the underground boring, I brought this up over a year ago. If we're paying $35,000 for the budget next year, what did we spend last year doing that? And is that a concern? The answer would have to come from you guys. If it's worth purchasing that, and how much more is in front of us. Again, do you have the manpower to do that? That would have to come from you, and I don't need an answer, right now. But as we purchase and become more streamlined by purchasing this equipment for the ratepayer's sake, that brings up where we put this products. So we may want to even look at the storage facility to house these things, so these things aren't sitting out in the rain and snowstorm, so we can use them effectively. So I don't think it's just one piece at a time. If we start looking at, this is the philosophy that I'm discussing, and that's the way that everyone wants to go. We should be adding some things into the budget besides just a backhoe. And I am a person that would rather see and approve something in the budget, in the whole picture, rather than try to find out what bucket we're pulling it from. So I'd like to hear the commission's comments on that.
Well, I don't know, I got a few things that I look at, when I purchase equipment myself, it's like, how often am I gonna be using it? And, because there's, in this situation, I would maybe ask, does the city have one? I don't know, does the city have a tractor backhoe, or is it, you're looking at a tractor backhoe?
They have a small one they use on the back of a compact tractor for doing graves, I believe. That'd be what they.
How often would it be used?
I mean, the biggest one's going to be the emergency stuff. I mean, we've been spoiled for years with the contractor, and they're just manpower, and skill on their end to a point. I mean, they're still doing that type of work,
Yeah.
but they had a lot more people at their beck and call or available throughout the years to do this stuff. I have contractors that I talk to and do this here. It's kind of one of them, the middle of the night on the weekend, are we gonna get a phone answer? We've been, the guys we've been working with have been great. I mean, we've fixed stuff at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night, Sunday night to minimize disruptions and stuff. So I don't know what, going forward, where we're gonna get that service and dependability to have that. And then, I mean, there's other stuff we can definitely, bell box repairs, hydrant, maintenance, small projects, curb stops and stuff that we are bringing a contractor in for now. So I mean, I think once we have, there's a lot more stuff we can be available to do, and more than just the emergency stuff. So, I mean, that's the biggest one is, and, is what's our reliability going to be? I mean, we're not necessarily going to have anybody kind of, and doing a little bit of research or recently just trying to getting some rough pricing and stuff, talk to some salesmen on different parts of stuff, all of a sudden he's like, oh, here, I got the quote ready. I just sent out 4 of these to fairly neighboring towns of us that are looking at this options because they're running into the same issues. The bigger cities, I'm hearing a little bit both ways of, they just don't have the internal power, manpower to do this stuff. So they're going out to a larger company and putting them essentially on a retainer of, you have a 2-hour whatever response time to bring in there, but they're paying, having somebody on call, a contracted type deal where they've got equipment sitting inside ready to go, and manpower on call to do that. So there's kind of been a big shift, but it's from what I've been gathering, it's the smaller stuff and the more outskirts of the metro, kind of excluding them, is there's a lot of people going back to that previously did and then got out of it, and then are going back to now just because of not being able to maybe get a deal or and pricing on top of it. If they are coming out there, they're going to get paid for it.
Some of the things to consider when you purchase a piece of equipment, besides just the cost of purchasing it, you got the cost to insure it and maintain it and house it, and the depreciation of it. And then another alternative is just to be, if it's possible, to rent that equipment when you do need, if it's not that often, what the cost of that is versus owning. What's the availability of that? Because that's another problem. Sometimes, it depends on the economy, as the economy goes down, there's going to be more available, probably more contractors available. But the past 4 or 5 years, I'm sure, every contractor's got all the work they can handle. And, next summer, we'll probably, even this winter, we're looking at a different situation. And I bring this, somebody brought it up to me when, just this summer, someone's like, I see the PUC bought a new skid steer, and, they could just come rent one from me, one of the rental shops in town. And, I'm like, it's a good point. And they want to know how many hours we put on it. And I didn't have those answers, but it is questions that we should be asking. It's like, if we're only using something 200 hours a year and we can rent it versus own it, and we could always have new equipment, that's something to consider too before you purchase, to make sure you looked at all those options.
And our my biggest concern is the emergency stuff. The middle of the night, I mean, we can isolate, but I mean, we're not going to, is getting contractors in it. And then I'm sure, if we did go this route, there's going to be times where we can't handle it. We're going to need something bigger, or but I think for the most of the stuff that I encountered in the last few years, we could handle them. We could get back up in a real timely manner.
Do we have any mini excavators?
What's that?
Do you have a mini excavator for the electric?
No.
What do you rent those, or do you use them very often?
No, I mean, we just did that cabinet for Minco, and we rented that just to dig in that cabinet. Otherwise, everything we've done has been a contractor that installs our cable for us. And when Minco did it, we had they dug that trench for that conduit going across the parking lot. Their cable plow has got a backhoe on the front and a cable plow on the other. So
We've rented
mini excavators
quite a bit over time here and there.
3 or 4 times a year that we've rented it. So you know, when we need it, you know, otherwise we use a back trailer or whatever, we get
So
by.
what, do the electric department, do we have a plow, we have a plow, right?
We have a maxi sneaker. It's for putting in irrigation systems is what we use to do our services now. So, yeah.
So we just purchased that a couple of years ago.
No, we've had that for,
What was it that we were talking about a few years ago? I can't.
There was some talk of updating.
there was talk of getting a different one or a little bit bigger one, something that had a little bit more horsepower, a little bit more weight to it. This is basically, just got a knife blade, you drag the services through the ground. This was some a little bit bigger that had a chute on it that you feed the wire through, and it just lays it in the ground. That was, yeah, a handful, 2 or 3 years ago, we talked about trying to upgrade it, but we just couldn't find one that was, to get a chute, you gotta go quite a bit bigger, and that's, you know, it wasn't, we couldn't really find one that was what we were looking for at the time, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's just some of the things to consider, you know, when you purchase any equipment is the, you know, the additional cost that come along with it, and then how often you get a return, you know, whether it's a return in reliability or a return in savings of, you know, hiring outside contractors or renting equipment.
It sounds like the concern of the availability, might be driving this whole thing.
You know,
And we've, like I said, when I first made this comment, that, you know, our reputation is on getting there, fixing it, down, you're back online. If it's becoming more difficult for availability, that's going to greatly affect how we get the people back online. You know, if it's water or electric.
yeah. I mean, and right now, I know you're a good operator, and I know. You know,
We have a couple other guys that are.
As long as we have you here, you know, it's good to have equipment.
We have guys already on staff that would be capable of doing a dig.
Oh, okay,
So it would be just solely relying on myself. We do have other
yeah,
people, and then we could continue to train the rest of them to,
I mean, it's not rocket science, but
mhm.
there is some safety,
Yep.
things like that.
There is an art to it.
We were gonna go out to the wastewater treatment plant, just dig holes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Like me, I draw a line in the sand.
Only if you do it at the shooting range, during there's more pipes, underground pipes, the wastewater treatment plant. I think that might send Chris over the edge.
You have to put everything in perspective. I envision the way they're talking about it. I think that once they get that, they'll be using it all the time. I mean, where you always find something that you can use that, and maybe you can help the city out with it around, a little favor here or there.
No,
We want to do that. We want to keep our relationship.
Yeah.
you know, I mean, every situation is different. I did make a phone call down to Elk River Utilities and asked them like what equipment they have and how often do they use it, and things like that. So they have too many excavators, they said, are out every day. You know, they're different than we are, I understand that.
Right.
And they have their own mooring too that they use. And so they're out doing a lot of
There's,
stuff.
we're right at a equipment change coming with this capital improvements plan.
Yeah,
We're definitely in a transition period coming up with this. Going overhead to an underground.
yeah.
It's definitely gonna be a timing thing.
Yeah. They had a few skid steers, two skid steers, and they had a tractor backhoe. They also said the same thing that, you know, sometimes it's difficult to get outside contractors. We try to do a lot of these things.
That's probably my biggest concern is we hate to be standing there and the water running out of the ground in the middle of the night and nobody answers the phone and
Yeah.
you start shutting off.
Even the red one, you gotta, how do you get it there?
How do you get it in the middle of the night and that?
Yeah, get a hold of someone in the middle of the night. Yeah,
And I mean, by all means, they're not a fun job to go down there and fix. Everything's flooded and wet and it's 20 below and they're not a walk in the park to go do either. So
Your hands are so tied at that point that,
I mean, and that piece of equipment, I have one that I bought in 1996. It runs perfect.
Yeah.
We used to use it every day. Now we don't do install sewers anymore. So, but I don't want to sell it because when you need it,
that's right.
you need it. So,
and that's where kind of local guys, I mean, we were talking about this and been discussing this, 10 years ago, there was a ton of local contractors. I mean, you guys had one, there was, I mean, there was
yeah,
in the 10-mile radius where you could have called 15 numbers to find it, and it was getting a lot less around that local. And there, we do that. I have reached out further, found some options, but what service are we, what level are we going to get out of that? Means we haven't had to use them as unknown at this point.
I mean, and then when you're talking about other uses too, maybe research, because now, our newer, the cat's got quick attach. So all your skid steer attachments, drums, grab the buckets, for brush, for trim. What else? Brush hammers,
Packers,
snow, and then snow removal too. They're really handy for snow.
And say with the electrical, there's going to be more and more need on that. We figure on that side. Maybe a little big for some spots, but it'll be a good starting point to start using it for that stuff.
Forklift too.
Forks and kind of
For materials. Materials.
you can,
I would like to reiterate Keith's observation about your truck. We ran into an issue this year. Bob waited too long to replace one of our, just a standard one-ton pickup truck. And of course, we purchased on the state bid. State bids are closing quite a bit earlier. So we basically told the guys that Princeton Auto Center is one of the dealers for the state bid, and we basically said first of the year we have to be on the list. So it's tough finding even just standard pickup trucks right now, especially if you're trying to purchase new and trying to purchase out the state bid contract, because I mean, even ordering a squad car, I mean, we're ordering squad cars for next year's budget now, because I mean, I think this year the state contract bid window closed in like March for squads. You just couldn't order them because they weren't making that many of them, and I don't know that that's gonna ease up anytime soon.
I did gonna add to it from a budget standpoint, this particular purchase, because we, responsible management over the years, we have a decent water reserve, and we're able to just cash it out of that, and it doesn't affect our everyday cash flow, but at all, pay for it. Somebody paid for it in the past, but it's paid for.
yeah,
I just want to make sure we're asking all the good.
And
So if I get approached on the street, I go, how much research did you do into this?
And we're thinking with that deal, that's going to get us a hammer to get through the frost, the trench box, the plate compactor to put the roads back together and all that stuff. So we're taking into consideration the whole package, what we need to do the stuff, and there's some other smaller items there that we need to acquire to have all the capabilities to do it. But kind of be a group of tools there that we'll need to put together. But
I do believe that 125 is in.
I pulled up some options, and some research there, and there's some some stuff out there that I think we can put that group together in that range, so.
So I throw that, Michelle, you brought up a great point, because we talked about this a year ago when we had $50,000 in the budget for a truck. Now we're at 75. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering, is 75 even enough? You know, and it just,
Yeah, I mean,
I
we
mean,
have,
you guys know what you need, but it's, you don't know.
I mean, we bumped our 1-ton truck prices up from, I think Bob had 55 in the budget, and we added another 10 grand,
So you're at 75 also.
65.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know what to tell you.
But we want to look at a truck.
I do have
Yeah.
one. in-
Oh, let's,
Yeah.
but just what we've done with dealerships says go order. If you put the order in, then they can order it. They're like, we don't care if you don't take it. But yeah, it took a long time. So we just put in the order and then we figured when it gets there, maybe a year later, we can decide. And they said, we don't care if you take it because we got 20 people lined up that'll take it. But yeah, there's no negotiating price. And I just had dinner last night with some one of the guys from Sherwood County and was just talking about that one of their trucks had the motor flew and they're trying to figure out why are we running that? Because we can't, they don't care about selling it to us. Yeah, it's
All right, this is really good conversation. We don't have to do anything now because it's just first look at it. But please, everyone be cautious of the things that we're talking about, how important it is. Other things, Keith, if I can, with the electric plan, if I could just have you go over those numbers. I don't need
Sure.
you to, if you feel comfortable doing it now, that's
Yeah.
fine. Otherwise, we do it at next meeting.
No, I'm happy to do it. So,
is that electric? So
Yeah, so what I'm referencing, Commission, is on the 23 plan electric, the numbers that jumped out at me were the large general and the large power. If you look under 2023 and you compare that to the 22 budget, one goes up by 29% and one goes down by about 23%.
so if I can, in regards to that point, if you look, so just comparing the 2022 to 2023, yes, that looks a little odd. What I would point out is when we did the 2022 budget, we did not have, obviously, the 2021 fiscal year ending numbers done, since we were in the middle of 2021. The 2020 numbers, given that it was the COVID year, I did not particularly trust. I didn't know if that was sustainable. And so really the 2022 budget was driven primarily by the data that we had from 2018 and 2019, where you see that spread. But what has happened since 19, as you track those two rate classes across, they have come closer together. And so the 2023 budget is more representative of what we saw last year, and which also tracks because those two rate classes are pretty close together so far this year as well. So there was a shift that occurred during that COVID year, and I felt that it was probably a better assumption going forward to base it off 2021 data rather than 2018, 2019 data. Now, I will also point out that the direction we're going is to also add in an intermediate power rate, which our system isn't set up for yet because we haven't done it yet. But when we get to budget discussions next year, the large general actually is going to be split into a large general and intermediate power as well. So those numbers will continue to change over time. That's why you're seeing that difference. It was really more of baseline year that we used for the budget projection.
And by adding a fifth category, that's gonna skew the numbers over that time, and that might be difficult to.
Well, it'll split the large general. The large general is going to be split into a large general and intermediate power. So it'll, in theory, those two rates summed together will be what the large general was.
Any questions in that, commissioners?
If I could, just to kind of recap what's in front of you is, at a high level, I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of where we thought expenses and revenues were going to be, and then try to look at a cash flow. You know, it's in a perfect world, all of our budgets are accurate. We end up at break even, right, Michelle? But that never happens. I did run a scenario of doing plus or minus 10% in terms of sales, because if we have a hot, dry summer or a cold, wet summer, things can vary quite a bit. As we pointed out, our revenues can vary a lot just based on revenue and economic conditions. I just kind of did last year I did lows and highs. I think that was a little confusing. What I did this year was just to say, hey, if our revenues are up 10% and escalate, you know, expenses, basically, our wholesale power costs the same way, what does that mean? And basically, if we do a plus or minus 10% variance, you're looking at plus or minus $200,000 on the margin. So, you know, just to kind of put it in, you know,
Is that on one of
it's at the bottom of it's right here.
this,
Yep, that bottom, that
we have an electric.
correct, that bottom right
Yep.
box there. So I merely wanted to point that out because as much as us administrators like to say we know everything and predict everything, it's a crap.
Yourself.
It's a crapshoot. And in all honesty, you know, if our margin varies by plus or minus a couple $100,000, that's in the noise. That's weather variation. It's just something that we manage, which is why I do monthly budget updates myself, looking at revenues and expenses internally, just trying to always keep things in balance. But just don't assume too much accuracy or what you might want to do on it. On the water side, same thing. Kind of looking at revenues and expenses. Oh, I will also point out that on the electric side, the cash flow analysis that Blair did also fed into. So that rate study helps with things like this as well. On the water side, same thing, comparison of revenues and expenses. If you on principal payments, we come up with the margin. Their water is obviously a smaller overall budget, overall department size. So a plus or minus 10% variation is about a $50,000 swing. Either way, and again, that depends whether we have a dry summer or a wet summer. Could affect those numbers. So I think we have a good planning document, and that's how I look at the budget. It's kind of our plan, but it is things as we've seen that if we need to, we will come in during the course of the year and tweak them. But that was the thought that went into those numbers. Any questions on either of those sheets?
No.
The other
Thank
thing,
you for explaining that, because when I looked at it, I couldn't. Didn't make sense to me mathematically.
yeah, so that's the intent. That's what I'm trying to communicate.
That is, you know, when you look at a budget of this size, putting in your variable there, I think it's, at the risk of sounding minimal, it's pocket change. Your variation is in a budget of this size. How can you be anybody? Even if you're smarter than Michelle, you can't be that.
Someday I'll be there.
So I'm pointing that nobody can do
No,
get a volume of business like that.
that's why it's called a budget, but it's not the life and.
I'm sorry, sir. I was gonna go through the 5-year plans next. Unless there are.
Go ahead, and then I want to address, the budget as whole.
Okay, the only other thing that, and actually part of this was because of last year, we actually put this together for a work session. Again, I think it's a good, planning tool, so I went ahead and put it in our actual agenda packets, for this year. For the electric department, water department, and then I also did have a major assets, which is building grounds, clean and equipment. Again, none of, these are more to just illustrate things that we're thinking about. These things, a lot of these have not been approved, except for obviously some of the cap plan stuff we are continuing to move forward on. So this is not meant to say that, the commission has said yes to any of this. It's more of just to illustrate things that are coming up that we think are important to be aware of. So for example, if you look at electric, the major ticket item in the future that you see outside of the cap plan is our warranty renewal on number 7. It's due in 2025. That typically runs around $100,000. That's a 5-year warranty contract. That's paid for itself many times over with that. So I think we're money ahead on that one. But then if you look at water, what you'll see is just making sure you keep on our radar. Obviously the AMI that came in 2022, the 7th Avenue project that is being worked on, which is probably more of a 2024 activity. Looking at the washing of the towers on a regular basis. We are starting to get within the planning horizon for doing the repaint of the North Water Tower, which is probably going to be about $500,000. Some miscellaneous equipment at the treatment plants. Again, I always like to point out that a couple of years ago, we did actually absorb the Minnesota Department of Health fee that we were charging to our customers as a line item on the bill. So that cost continues. And then we were, doing the comp plan and the wellhead protection plan in this current year, but just kind of looking forward on that. And really where you see most of the planning going in is on the major assets. And I apologize, this came on smaller. The roof replacements, so you can see the schedule there. Looking at the fleets, again, trying to start to think about how do we do this on a regular basis so that we don't get caught in a year where we have to have a huge expenditure come through. And then looking at equipment and in the office in terms of, if we go forward with back to 2023, perhaps maybe, Jeremy and I have been talking about chipper. We might just, given his comment where we are in this transition where we're going from overhead to underground. Once you're underground, tree trimming becomes less of an issue, obviously. So do we just run that chipper into the ground and hope it makes it all the way?
The chipper it is what it is. It's running now, but we cannot find parts for it anymore. So if it hand grenades tomorrow, then it's going to be an issue.
And at that point, we don't even know what we're going to do.
We've discussed the rental of it, or do we buy a $10,000 chipper to get us through the next couple of years or whatever. And if we come to budget time next year and it's still living and breathing, then we push it out another. You know what I mean? But that's why I brought up the transition period. It's just. And if we can
At some point in time, you're gonna have to face the issue.
And if we can get through the cap plan and we don't need a chipper, then it just is away. It disappears.
So again, it's meant to illustrate to the commission things that we're talking about internally, things that we have on our radar that we want to consider. And then on the IT side, also, making sure that we keep our servers where they need to be, doing constant workstation replacements and miscellaneous work. I didn't mean to put it under IT. Under there is a section that should have been moved up further. which is a warehouse addition. We don't have a recommendation. We can stay there. We currently, we're okay. We've got, we've got things stored. But as we look forward to, and the buildings are standing. Right? And as we start looking out, where are we going to be in 5 years, in 10 years, storage is going to be an issue. So we thought it would be good to start having a discussion now, kind of put together some options, and see what we want to do. Like I said, we don't have a plan, but it is something that is a concern of ours, kind of in that 5 to 10 year.
You actually have it on your budget twice.
Oh, do I? Is that
Yep.
why?
It's under IT and it's also under construction.
Oh, that's why I didn't delete it.
So you should.
I will do better.
I'm sorry, Wayne. The meeting's gonna have to close pretty soon because mine.
Enough mine died a half hour ago.
Actually, we do have those scheduled for replacement here. So, so those are, again, it's more to, let the commission know the kind of conversations we're having internally, things that you might see, in the next couple of years, and kind of the direction that we're going with it. That's what I have on the budget. If there's any questions or comments or.
I have a couple of questions because we're going through this rate study program. And a lot of things are changing and we're broadening our scope as part of different categories. We've hit some milestones that we've been shooting at for a while. The rate change for the city, what is that percentage increase that the city's looking at? Did I hear or read 6% or something like that?
I believe the analysis that I did as a whole is 5.6%. I do know that the city, because of how they budget, and how they allocate those utilities, can make some budgets significantly higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
So from a department standpoint, I think it's causing some concerns.
What does, before you get involved there, what does that 5.8 or whatever percentage represent in dollars?
I want to say it was like $8,000.
8,000, okay.
I think. I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me.
It just, if it was 80,000, that's one thing. It's 8,000, that's another. Still, it's $8,000.
I'm going from memory though. So.
That's fine. What is the commission's feeling about that? We just go with the DGR recommendation and that's it. We've hit our
Fee schedule.
no, I'm talking about a little bit of everything. That we've hit our 180 days cash on electric. I don't know if the commission knew that or not.
Could I provide some
Sure.
quick background? So in doing the rate study, keep in mind Blair and I are both engineers. Okay, I'm still recovering from. So we tend to take a very black and white. Here's what it means. And when we look at rate schedule, when we look at expenses to revenues, we could not, for all practical purposes, the city acts like any other business. We couldn't justify, just from a purely number standpoint, a separate rate for that. The load sheets are the same, the way we interact with them in terms of pay and everything else is the same as a small firm. So having a separate rate structure for the municipal, from an engineering perspective, doesn't make sense. However, what has happened in the past is that the utility did do that as a way to help the city. I can say the word pilot, doing a rate reduction as a financial incentive to the city. Blair, and my perspective, again, from a pure engineering standpoint, is it's not accurate from a rate study. You should just have revenues and expenses matched. Now, if the city, or I'm sorry, if the utility wants to help the city, then do it outside the rates and just cut them a check. would be the recommendation from EGR. It's transparent, everybody knows what you're doing. So you keep your rates pure. And then if you want to give the city $8,000, just do it, call it what it is. That's the recommendation that came from DGR. Now, the commission has, I mean, it's up to what you guys want to do. You can do a couple of things. One is, you can just say, the rate study is the rate study, and that's our cost, and that's it. You could say, no, that special rate for the city has some value, so we want to keep the municipal rate the way it is, which is not charging the monthly charges. Or you could say, we want to keep the rate study more pure, but we understand the financial impact it has on the city, so we will just give the city the $8,000 or whatever the lost revenues would be, had you done it through a rate. So does that help?
Well, the other option too is if we helped with the project some way, you know, either financially or our physical aspect of the project, that might be harder to keep track of or keep that information separate and transparent. But I don't know if there's options out there, and I just want the commission. I really want Dan and Jack, I have my own consensus in my head on what I think I would do, but we're not voting on. But I'd like to get that inside information from both of you.
Can I just
Please.
interject just briefly?
Yeah.
So when Keith talks about 5.6% increase, okay, that's an average over I can't remember how many line items of all of the accounts that we have as a city. And Keith and I have had some conversations because obviously from a large generator, the wastewater plant and the liquor store are gonna see a decrease. Well, that's fine and dandy, but those are enterprise funds. They're supposed to balance. Obviously on the liquor store side, that's a profit center. So typically we have revenues that exceed expenditures. So that's gonna make our bottom line great. And it's gonna help me balance my wastewater treatment plant enterprise fund, which tends to be out of balance. And I have to figure out how to get it closer into balance, hence the rate increases for the sewer usage. My bigger issue is the other 24, 26 other line items.
Smart parks.
That hit the general fund, because that is a direct expense to the levy. And as Keith and I are talking, I've got like 3 or 4 accounts that the monthly electric charge is $1.96. And now you're adding back the $20. Well, that's more than a 5.8%. And that's $240 a month that I didn't know about. I've already set the preliminary levy. So now I'm trying to figure out at the end of the day, how do I need to adjust my utility budgets so I stay within that 12%? Because I can't increase the levy. Once the preliminary levy is set, that's the amount of dollars I can levy against all the property taxpayers in the city of Princeton. So 5.8% is a great average. But at the end of the day, when you look at the buckets of accounts, the biggest impact is to the ratepayers, or not the ratepayers, the taxpayers. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm not speaking for the council, because I'm not gonna put words in their mouth. From my perspective, I get where Keith is going from and where the commission is going from. I think transparency, and we strive to do that. I'm striving to do that with my own budget. Hence my pushback when they want to take money out of the profit center to lower the levy, that doesn't help anybody because you're just hiding the cost of doing business. But I'm just trying to figure out how do I make sure that I'm not taking dollars from a different pot in a budget in a department in order to pay for that $240 over 3 or 4 accounts that I didn't budget for.
And I think there are a lot of options here. I mean, we deal with rates every year, just like we deal with the levy every year.
Yep.
You could just keep it in place for a year to give Michelle and I some time to address that change. And there are things where I do think you and I and Bob and maybe Jeremy should sit down and see if we can't rewire some of these things to get rid of some of those extra accounts. Because I think one of the things that happened in the past is, well, you didn't have a monthly charge, so we'll just pull service from wherever's close, which created an extra delivery point. And I've been reviewing a lot of other utilities the last couple of days. Connexus is this way, Xcel is this way, East Central Energy is this way, Elk River is this way. It's based on your delivery point into the property. Not, is it plastic products, the hospital, the city. And so I need to be just a little careful, and you get this. And so, you know, from the rate study perspective, Blair made assumptions based on the data that we have, and we came up with numbers to fit that. We can change that, but then there will be secondary and tertiary effects from that. Not that we can't manage it. I want to continue to work with the city on this. So there are ways, I think, for us to figure this out. So appreciate the conversation. I think it's really important. We don't want to do anything to harm our friends over at City Hall. You know, and so how we move forward, I think, is something that's a good discussion.
And that's exactly my point for bringing it up, because I don't want to talk about it next month because that's November. And so I think it's really important this time that we discuss as a whole, the whole rate study and what's being recommended to us. We may want to take the two scientists or technicians, whatever you wanted to call it yourself, but the engineers. But it's still up to us what we want to approve, and that's why if you two aren't going to answer me today, then I'll answer next month.
I'm listening for.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to digest, but I think it's important.
Yeah. You want to go ahead? Otherwise,
Well, I had a little bit of discussion, I guess. Recently, I think Keith kind of gave me an overview of it too a while back. As I'm hearing more and more into it, I wasn't considering the fact we're already into the budgeting process, and I fully understand Michelle, and we've looked at a rate study that's going to look at it. I would say for this year, for 2023, we should probably leave it alone, but it would be your project for you to next year for the 2024 budget to make it more palatable. I don't know what the right word would be, but that would be where I would go from. But I'm maybe gotta be a little careful here because I may be between a rock and a hard place actually. At the right thought.
find out in a couple of weeks. Can we push this up? I think about the Greg Hansen, when he moved, but we're here to represent the ratepayer and the taxpayer, and always necessarily the same thing. So that's when I look at that, the ratepayer aren't all city of Princeton residents, so it's not very many of them. But does that mean they don't get a voice? It's so hard because we're put on here by the city of Princeton. And the three of us are by the city council. But yet we serve people that aren't represented even to put us on. So, you know, and it's a tough one. Always is whenever we get into that ratepayer, taxpayer, it's always, you know, I think I'm confident we can probably work something out. But I do like to be transparent. I'm not a fan of the pilot because most ratepayers have no idea about that or anything. They have no idea they're paying that as part of the rates. I don't have any problem with helping this city out and giving back, but there's ways to do it where it's not hitting your rates,
Right.
so to speak, is how I look at it.
I don't think anyone here is recommending to even use that word going forward. There's, like I said, different ways of doing it. So this is the discussion that I wanted to have for this meeting. So with that said, unless there's any more discussion, think about it, ask questions. We can't talk to each other, but our middleman can. But and maybe we do our own little research.
You didn't share what you said you had.
I think, well, the new comment that came up is if you can look at it two ways. You can say, okay, let's go with what the rate study suggests and do that. And if it costs the city on average $8,000 annually, and then you two make these differences so there's clarity for Michelle on these things and streamline everything you can. And then you can go back, or you just do the opposite. You leave it alone. You guys figure it out, and then we can drop it next year. But I think more data is what's needed. Is my opinion. To just so if we want to be helpful and less stress on the council and Michelle and everything else, then we look at it that way, that we just leave that part of it alone.
You already set your budget, is that what I hear you saying?
So by the end of September of every year, we have to set what's called the preliminary levy. So basically we look at total expenses minus local government aids, minus any fees that we can impose. And then what's left is the amount that we levy to the property taxpayers. So based on the requested, the various increase in expenses. So we have a 2.5% COLA, we have 15% in the budget, which will drop for health insurance premium increases, plus just inflationary increases for fuel and those types of things. At the end of the day, we need to levy an additional 12% to the property taxpayers over and above 2022 rates. I can't go more than that. So if you're telling me, and again, I don't disagree with you wanting to be transparent. That for me personally, I think that's a good thing. And again, I'm only speaking as a person, as an administrator. I'm not speaking on behalf of the council. If you're telling me that I have to find $8,000 in the general fund budget, that means I have to figure out where I need to shave. And that's assuming that everything else stays flat and I don't find savings elsewhere. So like, for example, that 15% health insurance increase, we tend to split that in some fashion with the employees. So does that mean 7.5% the employees absorb and the city only absorbs 7.5%? Well, in that case, now I've got savings, I can absorb that $8,000 increase. But if I can't negotiate, if I negotiate that we have to absorb 10%, well, you know, now I've got a different number to deal with. You know, we're finding things like, for example, talked about the car charge. Well, we're going to save $1,500 a year on the car charge. Okay, well, now I only have to find 6,500. You know, so you know, Ed's looking at a different solution for the library's fire phone thing that will save us another $1,000. And you know, so it's not that we're not shaving, because obviously the council would prefer at the end of the day a 10% levy increase over a 12% levy increase. But like the mayor says, that's 1% is roughly $25,000, give or take. So to get down 2 percentage points on the levy, I need to find 50,000 off the budget. So it's those kind of numbers that we're talking about.
Yeah, I've done, well, 12 municipal budgets, 8 county budget, or generally have the required by law to submit a preliminary budget by September 30th. So the practice, good practice is to give yourself a little cushion, set it a little bit high with the intent, bringing it down at the end of the year. So she doesn't need to be paid for any increases. She needs to be, she's already scraping the barrel trying to find.
Well, like I said, you know,
Get an increase now, it's
so for example, I budgeted for a 15% health insurance increase on premiums. I was told it was only going to be 9 to 10% back in July. Well, after last year's exam experience, you know, I'm a fairly smart cookie. I added 5%. Well, the increase came in at 13. And assuming I can split that somehow with the union groups and the employees, you know, you know, so now so I got a 2% cushion on that, and then, you know, some other number which would reduce that. So, I mean, I've got some wiggle room, and like I said, we're finding, you know, 1,500 here and 1,000 there, and you know, and we're not done with the entire budget yet either. So, but I'm not going to be able to go back and adopt a budget that has a 13% levy increase.
you can.
A question for you, Michelle.
Yep.
When did you hear about the possibility with the rate study that this 5.6% increase may happen?
Well, I mean,
To me, it's critical.
yeah, I mean, I knew that there was discussion on and you know, so shame on me because I didn't ask Keith what the actual hard number was going to be until after we set the levy. But I knew that you were considering potentially eliminating the municipal rate. But until I knew the numbers, and I don't know that Keith would have been able to give me the numbers before.
Well, I'm still working on it.
Well, it's just it, you know?
Well, that's why I'm trying to decipher.
Yeah.
If to just my comment, everyone else speak their own, but if you didn't have the information from us on what might be happening, then I think it's very difficult for you to do as you explained, to find these other ways when you basically your hand is tied. So for me, if it's after September 30th, and we're just almost a month past that, and Keith is still working on it.
Yeah, and I'm not panicking right now. I mean, it was disconcerting and a little distressing, and I kicked back a bunch of info that, you know, Keith was very kind for me to kind of give me, you know, a very nice spreadsheet. I was able to pull bills. I was able to look at and do some analysis. That's where I found that we have like these 3 or 4 accounts that the monthly charge is $1.96 or whatever the number is. And like I said, you know, on the bigger scheme of things, when you're but still, it's. And I acknowledge, I mean, Keith is still working the numbers. We still have things to talk about. I didn't have a hard number. I knew that there was a good possibility that that municipal, I'll call it a discount for the city, might be going away. But until I have hard numbers, I just budgeted as we would normally budget.
Well, all of this is new for everyone because it's been so long since we've done a rate study. So I just really wanted to talk about that. We don't vote today, but just.
You brought up another point that we did at the beginning of this, our 180 days.
Right.
So where are we at with that?
At 180. We've hit our mark. So, I mean, that's a tip parade for us.
But we have to maintain it too. We want to maintain it.
Well, yeah, that's been the goal, but
So
for a couple of years, so it took a couple of years to hit it.
we gotta be careful, not to discount or something. We have to be cognizant all the time. It maintains. But my point was, I think it's where I have some pretty deep experience with this.
Well, I mean,
We're part of it.
He did a small. We know we've hit our 180 days of reserve.
And I'm not saying that we should do it, but should, but that plan for the next cycle, the 2024.
That's where I'm going with hitting 180 days. I would be leaning to be a good neighbor and that's the way I'd be.
Well, I mean, for like 98%, it's just one hand to the other,
Yeah.
Ratepayers and taxpayers are the same. It just says a couple of people's.
But business and business.
Yeah.
But I think and if we change it next year, then all parties know about it.
Yeah.
They can budget for it. But I think right now, without taking a vote, but I would definitely be looking at that one.
Keep it municipal.
Keep that intact, so you would not see.
Well, I think we'd all be interested, at least from my perspective, looking at, are there things, but there's always a cost to make those changes too, is, it's just like, I talked with Ed today and we're talking about changing, the library system doesn't need the security part of the phone line. We pay $130 a month for the phone line. We have a potential cellular option. It's $500 for the appliance and $20 a month for the cost of the service. But, what does it cost us to disconnect from the current provider? What does it cost to change the contract with the fire and security people? So there's other things that go into some of Keith's potential solutions for the 2024 budget. We have to evaluate, at the end of the day, it might be less painful just to absorb the $20 a month, for the 24 budget, but at least we are, what I would say, kind of ahead of the game. We have hard numbers to work going forward.
Okay, we gotta keep moving.
I need to get back and make my fire assessment, so I'm gonna.
Well, I've already shared with you the last time.
Yes.
ED drivers.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We have item D.
No, I need that.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you for.
Okay, item D, economic development rider introduction.
Mr. Chair, so SIPA has had in place an economic development program. We never, at least as far as I can tell, ever actually adopted it as a rider or tariff, simply because nobody was eligible for it. With the development of the new Princeton Business Park and with a large convention center coming in, we really have our first one that could get it. And what it is it's a credit from SIPA for the first 5 years for any new customer or any customer that increases the incremental connected load of 250 kW or greater, or is would become one of our 10th largest current retail customers, which I think the number for us is 153 kW from what I looked at last week. So I just thought it would be proactive of us to go ahead and implement or add this tariff into our rate schedule in the event that we do have an eligible customer move into that business park. There are a couple of requirements in it. The tariff itself was actually developed by SIPA. It's what other vendors have implemented. To be perfectly blunt about it, I went through and just changed the name for Princeton Public Utilities, added in the 153 kW load, which was as of January 1st, 2022. And then actually I didn't realize that the credits that are listed in the rider are from 2019. Just this morning, I got SIPA's new 2023 credits, which include the 10% rate increase that just got approved at the annual meeting. So I'm putting it out there. I don't know if there's any questions or comments. It's a pass through. It doesn't cost us anything. SIPA gives us the credit, and then we give the credit to the customer. To me, it's a nice little incentive to try to encourage some economic development. This is a marketing piece. No, this is the same thing. SIPA also put together this marketing piece that local EDAs, planning commissions, whatever, as the city is talking to customers, trying to entice them into a community. It's a little flyer that you hand out to the public. So just to give you an example of kind of what a marketing piece would look like on that.
With that, if we expanded our territory,
No, it's not an annexation credit. SIPA does that differently.
they do have something like that.
They do, but the way that that's designed is based off of the mill rate. Because if we annex property, typically what happens is we have whoever we're getting. We are doing that with the Princeton Business Park. There, because we annexed it, we are eligible for an annexation rate. This ED rate is a little bit more generous for the customer. But we could subtract out. The member is allowed to subtract out administrative costs. So I mean, you could. We don't have to pass through 100% of it. You know, you could pass through 90%. It's really up to the commission at that point. I wanted to get the language in front of you so that everyone so they can see kind of what that would look like. We've got some time. I mean, nobody's starting construction over there, you know, until next summer. But it is something that we can take advantage of some financial resources that are out there to help folks that are looking at rebuild.
So do we need to approve this?
That is, I mean, that's up to the commission. You don't have to. If you want to take some time and think about it, and you know, and we put it on the agenda for the next one, we can do that. If you're comfortable with the boilerplate that's simply put together, and we want to go ahead and just pass through 100% of the credit to customers in the interest of economic development, we can go ahead and have a motion and approve it right now.
I would just assume wait one more meeting
Absolutely.
in case we want to tailor it. You know, if it's not 100% pass through or whatever, but I think that gives the commission a little more time to read through it completely.
Absolutely.
I would feel more comfortable.
And that's why on the agenda I put it as an introduction. So it was
Right, and that's, I respect and appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of not being the team. So But yeah, if we want, there's a couple tweaks like that. Will you have any staff recommendation? Or is that,
As far as a tweak,
I can definitely go back and take a look at that. And, you know, give you some options. And then you can decide what direction you want.
there's some in-house expenses that you're gonna incur just handling the paperwork and everything else. So
Correct.
therefore, you may want to keep 2% of the 10 or, you know, something. That's our cost, so.
yeah,
I think the contract was simple as they did cap that because they didn't want they wanted it to go to the end user, so.
Right,
But yes, there is a provision in there for an
Okay.
administrative.
yeah, I would want most, I want to bring.
yeah, if you see that,
Bring more business in.
absolutely.
But if it is a burden on our staff.
Would that be the flip side of it? If somebody else, well, you're giving them something, and, you know. But if we're recapturing our costs to do it, it avoids that.
Yep,
And we've looked at that way ever since I've been here. You know, that we have an internal cost and then admin cost. All right, so that's gonna be on next month. I have one question for whoever wants to answer this, maybe Jeremy. When a home puts in a 200, I understand the size of that box. But if they want to put in a 400 amp, is that one large box or do they put two side by side and double feed it?
Well, they would need a 400 amp meter socket. Because typically you cannot have two services of the same voltage on a house. You could have one on your house and a detached garage.
Right,
But you would have to put a 400 amp meter socket on the house. You could get a 400 amp panel, I believe, or
okay,
they might allow you to do 200 amp panels. You know, to work it.
yeah, that's my question is, do you have one large 400 amp panel?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay, I've never seen them.
They do make them.
Okay.
But that, you know, I suppose you could do 200 amp panels.
Okay,
Well, that way, rather than really have to make.
all right, just a curious question. Number 7, adjournment. Anybody? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you all. Pam, do you need me to sign something before I go?
Yes, I do.
I'll come to you.
Well, next meeting, I'll know a little bit more about my situation.